Hey, blessings. This is Jaia, and today we're going to talk about her secret. Her secret's out. True confessions that not only change your life, but the destiny of life on earth. And this secret, we're just going to say it right off the top. This is about a food of the goddess. Opportunity to participate in a cleanse and to talk a little bit about the reflection of the health of the earth, mother as a whole, and the reflection of our own health and wellness in regards to that. And the secret is the tremendous healing that comes through plants beings, and we're going to go there. We're going to go into the plant beings beyond just the food part of things, a little bit of the spiritual part of foods, and the tremendous healing that comes in these times. If you've done a cleanse before, you may have had some of that experience of detoxing, but then afterwards maybe even having some symptoms that disappeared and they didn't come back after you went back to what I find too, after you went back to how you were eating, but usually most people tend to leave things out and tend to stay with it and then get into a cycle of doing another cleanse. And then that cleanse tends to pare it down even more, do a little deeper detox. And then the next time around, their diet's different again. They've left some more things out. So that's kind of like a natural cycle, way to do it, where it's maybe not so extreme, where you're taking everything out and having a real hard detox. And then you go back to everything you were eating before. So when I've led these over the years, many years, online, and there was one where there was a group in person, we were doing it. It's mostly online. I've noticed that's the general pattern, is that for a lot of people, they will go to a space that they haven't gone before in terms of their food, and then tend to leave things out that they just realize they don't feel good with them, they don't really need them anymore. And then the next cleanse around, it'll do the same kind of thing. So there's a cumulative effect of doing these cleanses and the tremendous healing that comes. So the family of things, when I was very young, if you had this experience, and if you haven't, it does sound a little strange according to our times and the culture we live in, of talking to trees and flowers and animals, and having a receptive awareness of how they're speaking back to you, right? So being really aware of the family of things and how everything is really connected, and then singing songs from them. When I was very young, that's happening. And now these days, there's many songs, as it's one of the things that opened up for me when I started doing the cleansing and the raw foods, then just as a way of life. That is what opened up, was a lot of the creative energy and the different areas of the world, or different tree or standing stone, they had a song in them. And I began in the Lake Titicaca in South America. There's just different places that had a song right there. So you don't know what might happen for you. The Devas and the elementals, if you've heard of Findhorn, this is a place in Scotland where the people were called there, and they began growing food. And the food was huge, in terms of what the normal size of that food should have been. And on top of that, they were growing it in soil that was almost sand. So what they were doing different, though, is they were engaging the Devas and the elementals of those foods, of the land, and the spiritual energy that is present in everything. And so it's absolutely present in the earth in many ways. So it's a part of things. So for me, besides being little, having that memory, those memories of just singing and having songs naturally come through when I was outside and in nature, and then forgetting all about that for many years, it was when my daughter came in. So she's having those things in a different way. And we used to go to the petting zoo and the little place locally, and she loved the chickens. She loved all the animals, but she really loved the chickens, and she used to call them duckum. And so one night I was telling her, eat your chicken. And she was tiny, little tiny pieces of shredded chicken on her plate with her other, probably things more like mashed potatoes and some just coming off of like baby food. And she startled all of a sudden, duckum? That what do you mean? And it was one of those moments, and she looked at me, and we used to do staring contests. That was one of the longest ones, and her eyes started filling with tears. Like, I can't believe my friends that I go see, you're saying this is what that is? So that moment was the beginning of the end for me for eating any kind of animals, but it took a little while. It was like everyone else grew up just eating whatever was on my plate, and it was everything under the sun that you can think of in terms of, an American, from hamburgers to the taco and the taco meat, and of course the chicken on the rotisserie. My mom made a lot. So it was quite a connection, quite a revelation that she had at such an early age, to make that, like, what do you mean chicken? That we just got back from all of our friends, and she squeals with delight, with all the chickens, and is saying, eat your chicken. And so that most of us don't make that connection by ourselves. It's just not something that we think of, something that comes up. Everyone's doing it. Everyone around us is doing it. And that was made when about almost 30 years ago now, about 25, 26 years ago. So what was also happening is we were driving one day, and it was not too long after that. We were in the car and the radio's on, and the doctor was talking about how pesticide levels are safe for adults. And as he's saying that, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, my daughter, going, okay, wait a minute, but her little tiny body is only like whatever it was, right? 28 pounds or something. And that's probably not safe for her. And just that day, I think it was more intuition than anything. Just that connection came again. And from then on, I was buying everything organic. And we're also going to a Mommy and Me class through the community college, where all of the parents would come and learn parenting skills and just connect, and keep from going stir crazy at home with toddlers and things. And so a woman came there and gave a talk right around the same time. And this is how things can happen. And she did organic food. She did a little co-op out of her garage. So we had boxes every week. We went from then on, and we were getting organic fruits and vegetables, filled with these fruits and vegetables. And so grateful for the ability to have that and to do that. And when you do surrender, when you come into that place of remembering and you say yes, and you don't even know how, sometimes you're going to do it. In fact, a lot of times you don't. You just do because you've had the insight. So then you just move on it. A lot of times the universe will support you to come in. There are so many stories of people that needed blenders or different things, or they, you know, they had some things, but they really wanted some other equipment because they wanted to move into making some of the other recipes of the raw food. And they would just come by them in the most unusual ways sometimes. So the universe, the divine mother, the mother earth, the devas, they're like, yes, please, please, you know, this is really good for you, for the environment. And so experimenting with these things and being willing to just say yes, even if you don't necessarily know how. What also was on the radio one time is listening to a study, and it was on the Associated Press. Again, right around the same time, as a little bit afterwards, but it was telling about how men's sperm count went down for those who were eating, they weren't eating organic foods. There's a lot all in this, and since then there's even more, and there's documentaries, there's things. I went later on and I could never find that study. I didn't actually look it up right now. Sometimes I'll, you know, years later try again. Maybe something new has come out in that now, but it was not there anymore. And this is also one of the things we wanted to talk about just a little bit, because it's sort of this, you know, this game that that goes on. And talk a little bit just about the game and how it affects health, right? How it affects our ability to even know what is true, what's really true, right? All these sources of media saying different things at different times, and each one is very convincing. We tend to come into a belief system based on, a lot of times, who's around us, right? What the group is about, what our values are in those spaces. And then we tend to just have them for a long time. So once you start to get into a space where one thing changes, and it's a really positive thing, and it's something at first where you know, you're really set on, no, wait, this is really what's true. Once you change one thing and it's really positive, it does open the door to be more willing to explore, all right, well, what else might be true that I just haven't come upon yet? So the media playing the game, part one, Merchants of Doubt. So this is a link, and if it's active on your screen, it might be. If it's not, you can pause it and write it down if you want, or just Google it, and on YouTube it should come up. So this is very disturbing in many ways, an account of people who become experts, and they go on and they talk about different issues. They play, in a way, they play the devil's advocate. So they go on against scientists and they talk about, you know, there's no proof of global warming, or, you know, and initially, you know, the tobacco industry is totally, no, there's no addictive, you know, part of tobacco. And so for tobacco, that particular instance, and they go into this in the movie, is that it took 50 years, but finally it was proven that the tobacco industry, they knew all the time of the health risks. You know, they had the science, they had all of the things, and they suppressed that information. And they had people going on and onto news broadcasts and different, you know, scenarios, and sharing that it's perfectly safe. So Merchants of Doubt, right? There's a lot of money involved in these different industries. So you want to research it for yourself. You just, to know what's really there, to know what's good for you, for your family. So how the media plays the game, part two, is just another example, again, of when you're watching something, anything, to get a second opinion or a third opinion or more, to research it from different sources of media, and then you get a more full account. And then you can, and it's not easy, right? Because we like to have our, no, this is true and it's absolutely true. But when you really just want to know what the truth is, and you might find an angle of it that you didn't know, right? A different angle where it doesn't completely change your frame of reference totally, but it, or your opinion totally, but it has a different frame of reference. And it maybe gives you a different way of thinking about it. So who killed the electric car? This was a documentary, and there's two different cuts. And so the first one, and again, these might be live links, hopefully, but you can write them down. So first one, the person is on a commentary, and he's just talking about it. And the way that he's talking about it, he makes it sound like it's just a total failure. That these cars never really, were able to be on the road and comparable with the gas cars. And the second one is, I can't remember, I think it's 8 minutes, something like that. And it showed the movie in a nutshell. And GM actually offered $2 million. They had $2 million to buy the cars back, and they destroyed every single one. And the car owners loved the cars. They didn't want to even really sell them back, and there was so much pressure. It was because they were leased, and it's very interesting. So that it would be so different. And if you only watch the one, imagine the perception that you would have. Wow, electric cars, they didn't work at all. Right? And if you watch the full documentary, so this is just an example of how varying things on the same exact documentary can be, and how you can watch something, a secondhand account, and have a totally different opinion or viewpoint just from the one person and how they're bringing it out. So how media plays the game, part 3. Let's see what's here. Okay, so to watch the commercials, right, to see who sponsors the show. So when you're seeing that, I've known people who have been in TV and media and journalism, and some of them have gotten out because they had the experience where they would go in and have a story and have a lead and have a real big story. But if it went against the sponsors in any way, they would kill the story. They couldn't bring it out. And on one link I used to have, they all got fired, and it was for the dairy industry in the US, and they showed just the different aspects of it, having that viewpoint, having the health consideration, and they actually just let them all go. For drug and safety effectiveness, who funds the study? This is another one to think about, right? Who's paying for the study? And just to note, there's a lot of resources that go into having a certain story a certain way. So it's not that there aren't times and places for drugs. It's just that a lot of it there might just be more choice than you've realized. If there's a place where you've been told that there's no way, that you're just going to have to manage this for the rest of your life. And when you understand it's 1.3 trillion in 2019, quite a lot. The worldwide market, and the top 10 companies accounted for about a third of the sales, right? So almost $400 billion. So yeah, a couple dollars there circulating around, and a lot of influence on things that get put out and how they get put out. So the game that we've been taught to play, right? So by playing a competitive, economically based game, or now there's something, the ego fixation, I go into that in some of the other work. It's not quite the personality, but it's sort of the same kind of thing. It's how you identify and what you're really going for unconsciously usually. And then what about me first, in order to win, right? You win your life, and you win the things, and you're successful in that. But if you're only going for that on this, what about me? I'm going to win the game against them, and I'm going to do great. Your soul, right? The light of your being, it will get weaker and dimmer, right? Your light will get dimmer. if your whim comes at the expense and the exploitation of life, how can you ultimately win? So there'll be an inner conflict. There'll be things that it's just not in harmony. And we do have the potential to live here in harmony. And so you could say, well, that's a belief, and it's true. And so that's, it's true, it's a belief, right? And it's also a vision, and it's an essence, and oftentimes an underlying experience, and seeing the difference when that is there and that harmony is there, and just how graceful and joyful can be, and how many things get reversed symptom wise, as I've seen before in the past. I'll go into that in a bit. So this is a while back. This is some of the things I was doing quite a while back. This is Gabriel Cousins in the middle. Did a 3-month veganic, organic, let's see, garden apprenticeship. So this was at a juice fast retreat, and I was I think I was director at that time, but had co-founded the Living Food Ministry at Agape International Spiritual Center. And we were there 7 days. Yeah, the group of us that was facilitating and helping with the juice part of things were out there at 4 a.m. starting the juice rounds, and people would come in and get their juice, and they, Michael and Gabriel facilitated that. It was really great. So that's one of the things, doing, co-founding that ministry. And then there was also the education, nutrition education, going through that, and a cleansing program going through to begin to do the cleansings online. So besides, pretty much for the most part, on and off, but pretty much for the most part, for many years being 100% raw food, and being in a space of just a very different energy level, clarity, so much there. So this is something, a list of a few things that I've heard people around the meetup raw food potluck tables. I haven't been to one in a while, and honestly my last year has been in another country, and the focus has been a little different. So while it's still been, and for me, you know, the vegan, usually that's it, and this has been a little different. You can hear the music in the background because of the sacred cow and the connection with the milk, with prasad, and in other things, connecting more deeply with the earth mother. But in a spiritual connection, very different. You probably wouldn't be having anything in any other country except for here, if it wasn't vegan, that kind of thing. So again, so once you start doing something and you go in a direction, and so for some years it was shifting and changing and transforming, and then it just was a smooth sailing kind of space. Very different. So around these potluck meetup tables, you know, while you're putting your food on your plate, and there's all these like, whoa, what's that? It's very creative, and you know, you didn't know there was pizza and tacos and all these things. And the people that have high diabetes, cancer, depression, anxiety, insomnia, disabling back pain, where someone really could barely walk. And then there was, and had back surgeries, and they hadn't helped in this. They were completely pain-free after doing this for a time. And there was one woman I remember, they couldn't even find out what she had. They couldn't even diagnose what she had. She had said, you know, 16 hours in bed a day, and no energy, and pretty much they were telling her, you should probably prepare, that your body's kind of shutting down. And then through a friend or something suggested that she try to just change her diet and do this. And then when she did, things started reversing. And when I saw her, I mean, her eyes were bright, her skin was clear, she was just totally rejuvenated. And so the things that the living enzymes in the food can do, it's quite something, right? And there's no, the thing about it, you have to do it for yourself and see what happens for you, right? And this cleanse in particular, you don't even have to do a raw food cleanse. It really can be whatever is in your frame of reference right now. Anything you'd like to eliminate from your diet. The only thing is that I ask is that it is plant-based. So there's a list of foods and there's different levels of doing things. And so if that is appealing, that is coming up. So you can probably already have seen the date where this is posted. So here's one more thing. Let's see. Cancer is a fast-growing cell mutation, but it usually takes years to fully develop, right? And you may oftentimes, unless it's so far advanced, but again, I've heard stories where it's stage 4 and someone just went right on it, usually at that point going into a clinic, a raw food clinic, and reversing it. So many stories heard. And with highly devoted lifestyle changes, right? So this is not just, well, you know, it maybe I'll eliminate some fried foods. So it really is that very devoted, and even using the word very aggressive, if it's an advanced situation that's going on physically. So there's a movie, Healing Cancer, and it talks about again, industry things to think about, statistics, how things are done, and then doctors talking about food. Generally, doctors, right, it's not the main education in nutrition, right? That's not really where the focus is. It is on the drugs and the whole system of the body, and then if there's surgery or different things like that. But it's not nutrition based and focused. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to just dive into a juice, you know, or go, you know, put themselves into a clinic, and it's not for everyone. But if you're choosing it, and if you want to experiment with it, then there's the possibility just to see how, you know, your body responds, and not just to if you have something that's a disease, but in general, just your energy levels and your clarity, focus, and sense of peace, sense of your ability to be present. A lot of things can happen. And like I said, creativity can really happen too. Now, getting into this again, we bring some of these things in just because it's good to know how much information is coming from different sources, and how much is from either just as this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, or from an economic basis of how much is invested in the current way of doing things on all kinds of levels, you know. So environmental activists have been seen as terrorists, right? Terrorist cells, #1 on the FBI list, as it was stated. There's a documentary called Cowspiracy. Very, so much information in that. And these are entertaining kind of documentaries too, where you can learn a lot, and then you take in for yourself what you sense and what is right in your life right now. So since they may interfere with a corporation's right and ability to profit, right? The #1 on the FBI list, I think Americans would be so surprised to hear that it was a environmentalist, you know, it was like the terrorist of the year, you know. That's not the image that would necessarily come to mind for you know, for beings living in that part of the world. So, but if you think about it, aren't they perhaps really immune cells in an unhealthy body? You know? And so when immune cells come in and they start fighting, you know, bringing awareness in to certain practices and the way things are done, and that it might, if you know, for the information they bring forward and what they reveal, it does change people's opinions and their ideas of, wow, what am I eating, and where does it really come from, right? So they might even be the medicine needed, right, to fight the illness or this disease. And 51%, this is generally not something that comes up at all, but again, this movie Cowspiracy is really great. 51% of emissions caused by animal agriculture, right? This is not something that's acknowledged even by most of the environmental nonprofits, or at least it hasn't been. So things might be changing now. Maybe there's more information coming out. And taking contributions, again, from, you know, who's sponsoring things. And so if the beef industry is giving an environmental company, you know, $1 million or $5 million or $10 million that year to help environmental effects, it's going to be the same thing as the, you know, that's their commercial, that's where they're being funded. And you're not going to necessarily see that on the person's front web page, anything about that industry, since that's also what was found in that movie. So a lot of things coming in these terms. Let me make sure, yes, we got that. So it was mostly a creative recovery. The only other thing that I had that was a health issue back about 20 years ago now was the debilitating, it was that time of the month, it would literally be physically ill sometimes. It was so strong when I was younger. And I was given, I think, coding, you know, so I'm taking coding, it's hard stuff, you know, I'm going to high school, so I wouldn't be, you know, throwing up in the bathroom. So it was really, really, really strong. And that is something when I started doing the living foods, even though I was just doing plant-based before, when I started doing the living foods, that's when it, zero pain. And for me, that was a shock. That was, I never thought that could ever be the case in this lifetime. So there's been little things that people have, little pains, little things that they're kind of like, well, this is just how it is. And those disappear, or even if it's not sleeping well at night, things like that. Or a little bit of anxiety that you just kind of, you know, you get used to, you know, compensating, and you just get used to like, well, that's just how I am, or that's just how my body is. So you just don't know until you try some of these things. So poems, paintings, music, book, you know, all the energy and the energy healing that comes through in that way. So if you want to know more about credentials and experience in terms of cleansing and the different classes I've done and mentioned them, but there's more up on thatlivingheaven.com, and then the section about Jaia. So rather than playing a game that exploits life and pits us against each other in some ways, this is really, my gosh, our differing beliefs and the competition factor, right, that comes into play. Game over, thank you for playing, which also might lead to more earth changes, more things that are being reflected to us, that major changes are needed, right? Personally, when we get a diagnosis or something happens like that, and then in the larger picture for the overall pollution and population, that these changes are really good. So rather than playing that game, what does it mean to simply live? Right, so keeping your heart open. This is a really big piece. So if you're watching something like Cowspiracy, there's a tendency over the years to feel really betrayed, and then it can even be a self-judgment coming in, like, well, how I should have known this, how did I not see it, you know, I'm not a bad person, I don't want to participate in these things. So keeping your heart open, you're going to have all those feelings, right? And it's being with those, it's part of the whole process. and to just be present with the things coming, and to know that at least you found it now, right? And so when you realize the violence that's coming on, and you realize that and then not everyone around you is making those same connections or possibly wanting to at all, to be willing just to choose for yourself if it's true for you to do that, to continue to have an open heart, make choices on her behalf, on the Mother Earth, and also those that maybe don't have the voice or the same kind of choice that you might have right now. She is life and a reflection of our health. So there's the potential to drive the market. And just like a vote in an election, where you are circulating your resources drives the market. The more the incredible amount of plant-based products and food, they can barely keep up with production, because it is becoming more and more of a, first kind of a trend, and then it goes into just realizing what better health, people start just having the positive benefits, and that starts to drive the market. So not just in that necessarily, even it's also things like clothing, things like, all different kinds of things where they made, you just become more and more aware. The more you start to come into anything like this, again, the positive changes, just having more awareness on the beauty industry and the different health and even the makeup products are animal tested, or the ones that don't have any of those products in them and they're not animal tested. Just going in and asking which ones don't have those. So knowing that how much everyone's choices do affect these things, because it can be so overwhelming when you start to research some areas that I'm just one person. What am I going to do? What you're doing, right? And so that one choice, what you're either not doing or doing, it makes an effect, right? And then the more awareness that comes into all of these different things and the way they're happening on the planet, and what's a really loving act, right? What's a really kind act in the space to be in, and having more choices where you don't have to be deprived, right? It's really not a place of deprivation, but then there's also the place of sacrificing to something bigger that creates more of a larger sense of beauty, a larger sense of and self-love too, right? It's all reflecting. So, and this is the best news, that we do have the power to change. Right? So you might not have the power to change your car into an electric car yet. I've heard of some technologies that people actually have some things where they're doing those kind of things, right? But we can make changes that have a huge collective impact. And it is even the car you buy too, and the different options that are in those areas also, right? We really have a lot more power than it might seem like sometimes, after, where we feel we just have to. So trusting life, knowing that life itself was energy of life, and that we are here participating at this time, in these times, is a really big deal. And trust others that touch your heart and inspire you, okay, to make new choices, right? And not just new for the sake of new, right? But ones that you want to see, how can this choice have more of an effect on everything. So have you noticed, if you've ever noticed, so your ability to create, to live, right, beyond the individual benefit and referencing, is what we're just talking about. There's something, sort of a bigger contribution, where you're part of something larger, and you want to be participating more and more in a way that feels really good. Once you learn more information, you want to put your focus on other things. So if you're doing those things mostly just for how you're feeling and how we're taught to live, right? And it's like you're being a good consumer, you're getting best price, and you're doing the things that make you feel good and all that. That's what you're taught to do. But you might notice that it almost has a sense of like outwardly you consume more, right? It's more information, more entertainment, more experiences, right? Than the success in the outer world. And then sometimes too, noticing where you're hanging out, and if it's in groups that have more of a sense of talking about others, or even like going in and sort of targeting and judging rather than creating, right? So noticing what the groups are in, and if you're growing, if you're growing, becoming more aware, engaging in things, participating in ways that are really inspiring. Those different connections, again, can have a huge impact. So being in your heart, true love, dharma, which is a word that means the essence of something, or the purpose, right? So your essence, your purpose, vision, and innate joy that isn't coming from something else. It's just being present with yourself, and this joy just starts to arise a lot of times, right? But you're noticing if even if that had been maybe, and when you were younger, noticing that too might fade over time when it becomes more, when the life becomes more outwardly and sort of consumer driven, right? Again, it's just how we're told, it's how we're schooled. So to begin to just look at all that and see where you are in it. So always, right, it's stronger together in groups. If you're trying to do a cleanse all by yourself, you're like, I'm going to do a 40-day cleanse all by myself in my little space, and it can be a lot harder. You can do it, and some of us can do that better, but to be in a group, especially when it's something like a cleanse, where it can be not fun. So detoxing in general, not like, woohoo, let's go in, and those toxins releasing. Oh, I love feeling when it's, all grungy and yeah, not the most fun thing. But the after effects, and it can be when you're having releases, it can feel really good. There might be moments though of the cleanse where things are really coming, and you're not having a great day, and what also can come up and start to really be present are the emotional stuff. It's like with anything. So when someone quits smoking, or quits any kind of thing that's been a behavior that's holding something else down, and so there can be some things that come very present, that that you're finally, all right, I'm gonna really look at this, and I'm gonna really have that intention to, whatever it is, forgive, really move forward from this pattern, really get clear that this can change for me. And I just really have to look at square in the face that things like that they're also a big part of the cleanses that I've led in the past. So we usually have two areas of focus. One is a body focus, what you really want to focus on for this time. And it doesn't have to be, if it's weight release, it doesn't have to be a specific amount. You don't want to be so fixated on that where you set yourself up for just watching that and having that be more of the thing. But it can be a weight release goal, or some other health goal, just having more energy. And then another area of your life that is a primary area, whether it is a relationship, something happening, or your work or career, or your dharma, your purpose. You want to know more about that. You feel like you're not maybe in that, or well, any of the other areas in life. There's a lot of areas. Those are kind of some of the big ones. And so anything in your life that feels like it's you have a sense that this feels limited. This isn't really reflecting who I am. That to make that part of the cleanse in the 40 days, to have an intention around that part of your life as well. So there is a food list, and then there's the different levels that you can work within that. There's a private hidden Facebook group. So you have to personal message me or contact me, and then I'll add you into that group. There are group video calls. We're looking at twice a week right now. And on that, you can share, people, you can share or not share. I'll come in and just bring in something, either a topic or possibly even some inspirational material, keep everyone collectively, inspired and going. And then there's challenges, if you're having challenges or successes, a breakthrough kind of happens, creative works coming through, right? If there's anything coming through, specifically ones during the cleanse, it's not so much a, just a collective sharing space, because they'll have for works you've written, 5 years ago, or a poem 20 years ago. So it's more of anything coming in through that time. If something's opening up and that starts the creative thing, it's pretty, it happens a lot that will start also happening for people. If you wrote a song, 20 years ago in college, or, on the guitar, that could start to open up again. And so inspiration to stay with it. And when you are tempted to quit, right? There's a lot about it just gathering. And even if you're feeling like total crap and you don't have any reason for feeling good or staying with it, maybe you're hearing someone else's success and it's inspiring you to go, all right, you know what? Or someone else just sharing, I feel like total crap. And then you'll be also saying like, okay, me too. And there'll be the 5 other people, me too. But so just so you have a sense of not just being out there on your own, and having a space to come in and be present with what's happening, and that place of transformation, because it can be, that it doesn't always feel good, but that it is bringing out new stuff. It takes courage, right? So you want to be with people who are also making those changes. So the part about self-responsibility, I am not a medical doctor, right? So I don't give advice beyond the simple cleansing practices, and to check in with your medical practitioner beforehand, and especially if you have any concerns about your health and your ability to participate, right? So if you're a beginner with cleansing, so choose, this is for all of us, for anyone, choose a level that will stretch you, but not totally overwhelm your system, right? So if you haven't cleansed for a long time, or if you're in a stage in your life where you're really busy, to go into a full, I'm only doing juice for 40 days, that would be a little bit over the top. And there is, in the outline, in the basic outline, there's a whole week for juicing, but we take a step down each week. And if you want to participate in that way, you might be surprised that, especially after you go through a couple weeks of paring it down, how easy people find that part of things actually is, and how nourished they feel, and even being able to continue in with their normal everyday life. And there's different strategies for, making the juice, and or, finding the place where you can have it made daily. So if you have a condition, right, or if you're on any medications, if you have a general question in relating to cleansing and that particular thing, sometimes I will know a resource. Sometimes there's modifications or a specific supplement also that's really helpful. So you can private message me, and we can see what is there, if I have anything that I can offer in that. And if you would like to contribute financially, it's really, really donation based. So as we go along, it's appreciated, but it's really not expected or required. So just so you know, I will be available also for the one-on-one healing sessions, right? So if things are really coming up for you and arising, I do have a master's degree in spiritual psychology, and that's one of the primary ways that I work is through like spiritual coaching and spiritual gifts coming through, those kind of things. And sometimes you'll have a really funky physical things happen. I mean like really funky. And I remember one woman, like her hip went out and she was just like walking but like for a week or two. It wasn't with my cleanse, but it was when she was first going raw. And she was just like, wow, this is so weird. My hip's out. And then it corrected itself and it didn't come back. So there's the opportunity. So there's different ways, different schools of thought. And so if something like that's happening to you and it's really a concern, right? And there's really something where you innately feel, oh my goodness, something's really wrong. I need to, then you should go see a doctor and they can, address it from that level. But just know that some of these things will, if you understand, some of these things will happen and they can trigger things that are inside the body that have been repressed. And according to your beliefs or your experience, some people, even things in other times, in other lives, in other dimensions, how far you want to go with that, we can go all the way into that area. So, but if not, it really is, it's like, okay, I don't know what this is in the body, but you can trust the process. And it's, as long as it's not really debilitating. There are some times too, depending again on just what your body is ready to release, and your intention can even start moving the energy. So some things can change. And obviously, if you have questions with that, you can drop a line. But if there's ever any concern, of course, you go to your doctor and they can see, from that angle, what's going on in that and assist. So, and also too, just the intuitive card reading, that general thing for your intention, anything like that, I'm open to doing those one-on-one sessions. I have links on the pages. So you can do it. So to intend and show up, commit, and then participate, right? When and if you do get off track with your commitment and what you had intended, you just get back on. And that happens a lot of times during the cleanse. A lot of people will just go straight through and they'll have a surprisingly easy time, right? We're holding space, done this a long time, and then the group energy and the support that's there, they're surprised by how easy it can be sometimes. But if you think about it, you really can't fail. Because even if you changed a bit of a pattern, right? Even if you started and just for a little while you're doing it and that stays with you, in time it will tend to cycle back around. And then you will have had that experience and you'll be able to go to the next step. So I remember 20 years ago, and the Master Cleanse, if you've heard of this, it's a 10-day cleanse where you're doing, only liquid and it's very different, right? It's just the lemon juice and the maple syrup and the cayenne pepper. And that's what you're doing for 10 days, along with another detox part of things. So the first day I said, I can't do 10. I know I'm not going to do 10. I'm only going to do 3. I barely made it through one day. And the next day I was eating. So, but the next time I did 3. Right. And so I could say like, wow, I really failed on that one, or I could just say like, okay, that's all I did for that time. But then the next time I did do 3 days. And so, and what came from it was that, again, just what you're receiving from it each time, and what your body, you get more connected with your body and with your body and how it responds to certain foods and how it releases. You know, some people, I know for myself, there's been times when I'm doing a juice week, and again, it just depends on what's happening. I'll get it while I feel a little bit dizzy. And in those times, I'll just go lay down and I'll let it pass through me. And I know a lot of it's energy stuff. And after that, I get up and it's fine. And so know that you can have symptoms and stressing again, really be in that place of self-responsibility, because this isn't a really close, you know, I'm not really one-on-one with everyone like I am sometimes in these. And so really being able to take that responsibility for your own body and what's showing up for you, and then participating as you are called to participate. So would love to have you with us. And there are details below and or a link where you can contact me, and we'd love to see you. All right. So I hope that there was some information, even if you're not called at this time, that you can use and explore, and can check in and see if we're doing another cleanse later on. All right. Lots of blessings, and blessings on your radiant health journey.